So during Donald Trump's hate rally at Madison Square Garden, he also mentioned that he has a secret plan, a secret deal with MAGA Mike Johnson. I want to tell you what his secret deal, his secret plan is. It's called the contingent election plot. First, I want to show you what Donald Trump said at Madison Square Garden. Then I want to share with you what his plan is so you are aware of the efforts going on right now by Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans to try to lead a coup to overthrow the government. Again, I'm not exaggerating there, but I also want to show you what is being done to stop it, why I think it is going to fail, and also how it shows just how desperate Donald Trump and MAGA is. Because if you believed you were winning, you wouldn't be conjuring up additional plans for a new version of January 6th. So first, let me just play with you so you can hear in Donald Trump's own words that he has a secret plan. He goes, it's a secret, it's a super secret. Watch what he said at Madison Square Garden. Play the clip.
And I think with our little secret, we're going to do really well with the House, right? Our little secret is having a big impact. He and I have a secret. We'll tell you what it is when the race is over.
As Jacob Glick says, Trump hinting at a secret with Mike Johnson to be revealed post-election. This is the clearest indication yet that if Trump loses, the plan to sow enough doubt about the election results in key states so that the House can declare a contingent election and proclaim Trump the victor. Contingent election. Remember that term. Lawrence Tribe says, at his racist Madison Square Garden rally, Trump spoke of the, quote, little secret he and Mike Johnson would unveil after the people's November 5th votes have been cast. He made clear it would involve the House and how he plans to use its 50 state delegations to wreak havoc and hand him back his power. Sean Patterson writes, Mike Johnson clearly has been in communication with Trump as to how they will try to steal the election when he loses. Trump wouldn't have said that they, quote, have a secret plan if they hadn't been speaking. Doesn't seem like it should be tough to catch them planning this. Mike Rothschild says, the secret is screwing with the certification and somehow triggering a contingent election through the 12th Amendment. It's only theoretically possible if Dems don't take the House, and even then it's more of a fantasy than the plan. And other commentators have said, again, the plan has always been to prevent certification of the Electoral College vote. Should Harris, or when Harris, reaches 270 Electoral College votes, throw the election to the House under the 12th Amendment, quote, a contingent election. There they vote not as individuals, but as state delegations. Now, this was part of the plan in 2020 to try to steal the election from President Biden when they were talking about throwing it to the states and basically having Pence not certify the election, then allow the House to claim under the 12th Amendment that they were going to invoke the contingent election. Under the 12th Amendment, it states that if neither of the presidential candidates reach 270 electoral votes, then each state basically gets a vote. And because there are more red states than blue states that are just out there as a number, the red states and the House of Representatives here under MAGA Mike Johnson would vote to say that Donald Trump becomes the president, or in this case, the dictator. That's what they were trying to do in 2020. Let me show you, though, just so you are aware that the Democrats know this is coming. Democratic Congress member Dan Goldman, who's been on the MeidasTouch network a ton of times before, former federal prosecutor, law and order guy. He knows what's coming and he's calling it out. And just so you have a level of confidence, Democrats have a plan and a strategy to deal with this. But let me show you what Congressman Dan Goldman is saying here. Play this clip.
Donald Trump hinted yesterday in his speech that he has some secret with Speaker Mike Johnson. Now, you wonder, why did Donald Trump come to New York 9 days before the election? This state is going to go to Kamala Harris. And the answer is that the House really runs through New York. There are 7 races that could go either way in the House, and that will likely determine the majority. And make no mistake, the House, we get sworn in on January 3rd. On January 6th, the certification of the Electoral College will happen again, and as we know from 2021. Whoever is in control of the House, of Congress, will be able to have a lot of say on what happens on January 6th. And I suspect, we don't know, but I suspect Donald Trump's little secret plan with Mike Johnson is a backup plan for when he loses and he tries to go to the House of Representatives to throw out the Electoral College, the certification from the states, and have the House of Representatives under the leadership and the control and the gavel for Mike Johnson and try to overturn this election.
So you hear there in Congressman Dan Goldman's words himself. Let's get a little bit into the text. Let's get into the weeds just so you can see what the 12th Amendment actually says. And then I want to explain to you a little bit more about contingent elections and what that's about, just so you can be educated on this topic. Let's just go over. The 12th Amendment says the electors shall meet, we have an electoral college. The electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for president and vice president, one of whom at least shall not be an inhabitant of the same state with themselves. They shall name in their ballots the person voted for as president, and in the distinct ballots the person voted as vice president, and they shall make distinct lists of all persons voted as president and of all persons voted as vice president, and the number of votes for each, which lists they shall sign and certify and transmit sealed to the seat of the government of the United States, directed to the president of the Senate. The president of the Senate, that's the vice president. The president of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and House of Representatives, open all certificates, and the votes shall be counted. The person having the greatest number of votes for president shall be the president, if such number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed. And if no person have such a majority, then from the persons having the highest numbers not exceeding 3 on the list of those voted as president, the House of Representatives shall choose immediately by ballot the president. But in choosing the president, the vote shall be taken by states, the representation from each state having 1 vote. A quorum for this purpose shall consist of a member or members from 2/3 of the state, and a majority of all the states shall be the necessary choice. So they call it the contingent elector scheme, or the contingent election, because it would be contingent upon something. Here, contingent on the candidates not getting the 270 electoral votes that are needed for them to be victorious. So the question ultimately is, or one of the questions is, how can MAGA Mike do this or try to do this if Vice President Kamala Harris gets the requisite electoral college votes the same way President Biden did, and is declared the winner? Well, one of the theories of Donald Trump's secret deal with MAGA Mike Johnson is that if the Republicans keep control of the House of Representatives, then MAGA Mike Johnson, basically by decree, even though it's not lawful, MAGA Mike Johnson will simply say, hey, we are not assembling. We're not going to meet. We're not going to count. One of the reasons that you see these betting markets right now seemingly being manipulated, at least in my opinion and other opinion of experts, being manipulated by foreign outside sources, and it's all kind of crypto-based and outside, it's so MAGA Mike Johnson and Donald Trump could say, but the betting odds, these odd makers had Donald Trump ahead, so something must not be right here. That's what they're going to try to say, to claim that there is serious doubt on the votes. They're going to do the same thing they did in 2020 and say, there's fraud here and there's fraud here and this wasn't right and that wasn't right. And then MAGA Mike will say, there's too much confusion. We can't even meet. Because as you know, and as I read there, it is ultimately the president of the Senate, the vice president, actually in this case, Vice President Kamala Harris, who would be the one who would count the electoral votes the same way former Vice President Mike Pence did that. And then it's just a ministerial task. Remember, back in 2020, they wanted Mike Pence not to do the ministerial task. Mike Pence did his duty, right? He did what he was supposed to do. He said, I have to count it. What Donald Trump is planning an end run around that, right? Because now it's Vice President Kamala Harris. So in my view, what they're saying the deal is that Mike Johnson, if he were to remain Speaker of the House, he wouldn't even let it get to a certification stage where the ministerial task could be signed off on, Mike Johnson would just say, nope, I'm not allowing this to happen. I'm not convening. We're not meeting. We're going to have to let the Supreme Court ultimately decide. Then the Democrats would, say, what are you talking about? There would be a whole thing. Vice President Kamala Harris would then be in a position where she'd essentially be certifying herself, because the vice president would certify herself. The MAGA Republicans would say, oh, that's unfair. You can't possibly do that. They'd file their lawsuits in the Supreme Court. They'll claim that they don't recognize her as the president and that they want the Supreme Court to make the decision. They'll claim under the 12th Amendment. That's their plot. That's their plan. Now, one of the ways they lose that plan and that plot before it even gets into kind of fantasy land territory is that MAGA Mike Johnson's not the Speaker of the House. So one of the reasons Donald Trump went and gave that rally in Madison Square Garden was also he wanted to try to give help to the vulnerable Republican Congress members in New York, because that's one of the areas where Democrats think they can pick up seats and ultimately take back the House of Representatives with some of those New York seats. So what Trump and MAGA Mike have to do is they have to keep control of the House of Representatives. Why? Because the House actually convenes January 3rd before the certification on January 6th. So if MAGA Mike's no longer the Speaker, Hakeem Jeffries becomes the Speaker. MAGA Mike can't illegally shut down the House of Representatives, and this plan gets foiled kind of right there. Assume the Republicans keep control of the House. MAGA Mike Johnson doing this is wholly illegal. Shutting down the House of Representatives or not allowing the certification to take place is not legal. It's not lawful. But then the question is, well, what's the Supreme Court going to do then? That becomes a question. We know the Supreme Court's been lawless. It would obviously be a violation of the law. But that's one of the things that they'll be trying to claim and try to do. So it's really why it's very important that the Democrats win the House of Representatives, because in plain view, you see it, the Republicans are planning that coup. Now, their followers have all been radicalized. I mean, you've got the followers showing up at events with on their vehicles paintings of Vice President Kamala Harris being hogtied and gagged. We're hearing across the country story of these radicalized MAGA followers going into places where people are casting their ballots and punching poll workers, spitting on poll workers, taking off their clothes. Here's an example of, and J.D. Vance and Trump, they're encouraging this lawless behavior. So J.D. Vance reposts this story and he calls this woman a patriot. He goes, what a patriot. And this was a story about a woman who was at an early voting site where you can't wear political merch at a voting site. The woman comes to vote wearing Trump gear. They tell her, you can't wear that gear. She then calls the poll worker a dickhead and rips her shirt off. She then tells another poll worker to suck her C word. And this is why she says, this is why I'm voting for Trump. She goes, this is why I'm voting for Trump. You're a dickhead. And then J.D. Vance responds, what a patriot, to her. It's not patriotic. That's crazy and violent and unlawful. We learned about a story in Bexar County, Texas, where a 63-year-old MAGA supporter wearing his MAGA or Trump baseball cap was told to remove it, and he punched the poll worker in the face. Here's video of someone in Pennsylvania electioneering, screaming, MAGA, MAGA, all these things which you're not allowed to do, getting removed and then saying, this is so unfair. And then the Republicans are using this as like a story. Michael Whatley, who's the co-chair with Larry Trump of the Republicans, like, they're being prejudiced to conservatives. They're attacking conservatives. But this is what MAGA people are doing at a lot of these polling locations. Here, play this clip.
Wow. That's crazy. You locked her up? That is insane, man. She is not influencing people. She is not at all.
And then, of course, I've got this video right here of J.D. Vance saying that he says that Trump didn't lose the 2020 election, and he thinks that Trump won in 2020, despite Trump losing by millions of votes and getting crushed in the Electoral College. I just want you to know they've gotten more radicalized, more extreme, more dangerous since January 6th. And they're plotting and they're planning. Play this clip.
And the second question, what message do you think it sends to independent voters when you do not directly answer the question, did Donald Trump lose in 2020?
I think, sir, look. First of all, on the election of 2020, I've answered this question directly a million times. No. I think there are serious problems in 2020. So did Donald Trump lose the election? Not by the words that I would use. Okay? So look, we could, but look, I really couldn't care less if you agree or disagree with me on this issue.
You want any additional data points that they're plotting and planning? Here's MAGA Mike Johnson, while Donald Trump's discussing the deal they have, saying, we're the rule of law. The other team doesn't, as they're literally plotting a coup right now. Here, play this clip.
We revere the founding principles. We revere our Judeo-Christian foundations. We revere individual freedom and limited government and the rule of law and peace through strength and fiscal responsibility, free markets, human dignity, secure borders. But the other team doesn't anymore, my friends. This is not your father's Democratic Party. They are now full on to Marxism and socialism. They don't envision for us to save the founding principles and the greatest nation in the history of the world. Instead, what they envision for us is that we would be some sort of European-style Marxist borderless utopia.
Look, sometimes you got to go to the philosopher Ice-T to hear what he's got to say. And take a look at what Ice-T says. He goes, as this election gets closer, I warned you to expect insanity. What I hate the most is finding out that people I consider friends are racist. They may like me, but talk shit about other races openly and probably don't like other black people. Make America great again. By the way, America is a continent, including Mexico. I'm not Democrat or Republican, but character is more important to me than politics. F the clown and those that roll with him. An obvious message there. Let me share this with you. This was from 2020. This is Rudy Giuliani, one of Donald Trump's criminal co-conspirators and co-defendants, with Steve Bannon. This is them talking about plotting the contingent elector scheme back then, which is what they're planning to do now. Play this clip.
That he wants, that he won and he wants another election immediately. I keep saying the Biden electors can't get certified. They're not going to be Trump election. We don't need another national election. It's called and I keep trying to get this into people's minds. It's a contingent election. It gets kicked. You're not going to flip the Biden electors or Trump electors. You're going to not be able to certify the Biden electors. And by not certifying the Biden electors, the Electoral Count Act of 1887 and our beloved Constitution have a way that what's supposed to happen. That is a contingent election in the House of Representatives where you vote by state party delegation. And guess what? Even with Liz Cheney voting Wyoming for the Democrats, I think we still win 26-24. So yes, we heartily believe what President Trump said because we know that the Biden electors can't be certified in Arizona or Georgia or the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania or Michigan or Wisconsin, those 5 states. That gets us below 270. That means you got to have a contingent election. So let's do it. Let's start the contingent election, this week. Let's do it. That's what we should do. And
then so finally, I leave you with this. It's why you've got to vote. And it's why in these next few days, you got to put everything on the line. You got to reach out to family members, coworkers, colleagues, neighbors, whoever, and get them to vote. Get out and vote. Let other people tell other people to vote and let them know. Show them this video. I tried to show you the data in a very detailed way. I know this video is a little long, but you got to understand the full contingent election scheme that they're trying to pull, how they want to go about it, throw it to the states, have the states make the vote instead of the Electoral College. Use MAGA Mike to shut down the House so it doesn't even go to Vice President Kamala Harris to certify. So don't even open up the proceedings. You would say that's unlawful. They would say whatever. Go to the Supreme Court. See what the Supreme Court has to say. That's what they're planning on doing. We can stop them by winning at the polls. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 4 million. Thanks for watching.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.